What is up, everyone? Today we start modifying the CB650 frames. We start cutting, we start welding, and this project gets on to the next step. As you saw, we got the engine to start by rebuilding the carbs, doing some of the electrics and battery and plugs and whatnot. We disassembled the whole bike down to the frame, and today, like I said, frame modifications. So I'm going to start with cutting some of the tabs off the frame to make it look a little cleaner. We're gonna set up and mocking up the seat hoop, and then hopefully welding that in today. And then maybe, obviously not today, but the next step would be to build an electrics tray, the seat, and then powder coating. But we are actually going to be working on both frames today, the 79 and the 81. So obviously I always talk about why I moved over to the 79 frame, but I did mention that I will still continue to build the 81 into like a mildish cafe, where this guy would be the main Empire Garage Cafe Racer. I've talked about the difference in the frames and the steering angles, and here they are side by side. And let me quickly go through the differences and then we'll start getting to work. Okay, so 79, 81. If you could see, if you could tell, this frame where the seat sits is completely flat, in line with the gas tank. On the 81, the gas tank sits fairly flat like this. I don't know if you can see that, right? And pretty much in line with the back of the frame. And we have this dip in the seat. You remember 81, Honda wanted to replicate that Harley-Davidson look, so the seat sat a little lower and the handles were a little higher. The steering angle came out more. I can't do anything about the steering angle besides lower the front of it, but I can do my best to bring this portion of the seat frame up. Now, originally I did not know what I was going to do, so I said, screw that, I'm just going to move on to this, and I was just going to just leave the frame be. But I thought about another approach. This is a, I want to say it's 79 or 78 CB650 back portion of the frame. Flat, just like the 79 650, okay? So my plan today, my approach today, is going to be trying to cut that portion off the rear of the 81 and welding this guy in its place. I don't know how smooth this is going to be, but that is the plan for that. Now with the 79, simple, we're going to cut off all these tabs for the side covers. We're going to do that on both frames actually, because I want it to be super clean and I'm not going to use those side covers. This is what the side cover looks like for the 81. It matches that dip in the seat. So once I do raise this portion of the frame, this is going to do nothing for me because it's still going to have that gap. It doesn't match that curve or that flattening of the frame. So these are going to be sold, and we're going to just keep it open just like I am on the 79. Now, in terms of the frame or the seat hoops, we have two styles here. One is just a flat end of the frame with the LED brake and signal, and this guy has a kick up. I forget the degrees of the kick up, but this is going to be going onto the 79 to give it more of a true cafe racer look. This is going to be going onto the hybrid 81 550 frame, and it's going to be more of a brat style bike. So flat, kicked up, both with the LEDs. So let's get started on cutting all of these tabs off. I have 6 and 6. This is the first time I'm doing this type of stuff, so I'd rather make mistakes on that frame and then move on to this guy. Alright, goggles on. I have my cutoff / grinding disc or wheel here. I'm going to be using a cutoff wheel to cut these guys off, and then I'll come around at the end and grind off the remaining bits of the welds here and clean it up. But let's get started. One down, 11 to go. Alright, we are done with the 79 frame in terms of cutting the tabs and little brackets off. I'll come around at the end with a grinding wheel, clean all this stuff up. Next step on this particular frame would be to measure and cut for the hoop and then weld that in place. Okay, so now it's time to cut off the tabs off the 81 and then mock up and cut the actual whole rear portion of the frame off. Okay, she's off. The rear end of the 81 is absolutely off. We have no more ugly dip in the seat. Now again, the plan is to use this 550 frame and somehow line it up, right? So I have no more dip. I'll have to bring this portion up a little bit and then weld all of that together. Pretty straightforward. We'll see how smooth it goes. This is going to be a learning experience in terms of welding, but wish us luck. Hopefully it turns out great. But again, that is the 81, so I'm willing to make a little more mistakes on that. This one, the 79, is all ready to be cut as well, just for the hoop. So what I need to do now is attach the swing arm so I can line up where the back of this hoop lands. So drawing a plumb line from the back of this hoop, I want it to fall fairly close or in front of the hub of the rear wheel. Putting the swing arm there will give me a rough idea. Obviously it maneuvers up and down, but it shouldn't change that much. I just don't want this to fall behind the hub, because then the whole seat will look a little too long, and obviously the whole point of this is to make the seat shorter and cleaner looking. So let's get the swing arm on and then mock up where we need to cut. Pretty much be like that. So like I predicted, I'm probably gonna have to cut right in front of this mount here. So the points where I'm going to cut are right where this mark is, right in front of the mounting point. There's a suspension. Same thing on this side. That's gonna give me the perfect length to attach the hoop. Again, I'm just gonna cut vertically here, and I'm gonna carefully cut along this whole weld. That way I can reuse this support or part of it for the hoop. Perfect. I might not even have to bend this. Alright guys, we are ready to get the rear hoop onto the 79 frame. As you can see, the frame is a tad bit wider than this hoop. I'm thinking if I can get this underneath the footing there, jack this up, I can, because I need a tiny bit of that to expand. I don't have anything else that I could think of. Like my bottle jack is too big to fit in there. I don't think this will be that bad, so let's try. Don't make fun of me if it doesn't work. Let's try it this way. Okay, that is working actually. I need to do a little more. There she is. That looks pretty good, pretty even. If you could tell, it is just perfect with the swing arm. What I'm doing here is I got this tubing, this steel tubing from Home Depot. It is a hair too small in diameter in terms of fitting inside the frame as a slug, so you don't want that to be really loose. What I've decided to do is cut them at 2 inches, right? Each slug is going to be 2 inches long, but I'm cutting a slit down the middle. That way I can use a flathead screwdriver and pry it open a tiny bit, just enough to become, here, I think this one's already open. I can start working my way, expanding it just to make it tight, because I don't need the whole thing to be welded because the two pieces are still going to be welded together, right? So that's going to be my approach. I'm going to use these slugs that I'm making. I'm going to make a slug for each joint, whether I use it or not. The only place I might not use it is at the end of the hoop with the 79, because it's a very tight fit already. But yeah, that's what's going on. I made this slit, as you can see. I'm using this guy to hold it because I don't have a vise right now. And then I'll just cut down vertically every 2 inches. What is up, guys? Today's the second day on the hoop setup and welding. As you know, we got everything grinded off. We got the back cut off, the 79, the 81 we hacked up as well. I'll show you that in a bit, but for now the hoop is clamped in place, so that just means one thing: it's time to weld her up. I just spent a good amount of time cleaning everything up. I did the last step with a wire wheel to get the little imperfections out. I got it as close as I can to the actual frame. I'm not going to be using any slugs on this particular weld here. I'll show you what this is really for. It's mainly for the 81. But I'm not using any slugs here because it kind of slides into the frame already, so it's fairly, like, even without the clamps, it's fairly tight and snug in there. So I'm gonna start with two little tack welds, take the clamps off, and just work my way really slowly. I don't want heat climbing into the hoop because, as you know, I bought this with the LED built in, and I've heard a couple guys just welding and heat climbing all the way up and melting that whole LED. I don't want to deal with that, so I'm just going to take my time. I did buy some anti-splatter spray for areas like the threads for the shock, so I sprayed those up already. Hopefully that works. We tested out the welder, the flux welder, yesterday. We made some passes, played with the settings. It's not that messy, so I'm not that worried. I'm still gonna go in there and grind everything down once I'm done welding, prior to paint anyway. So yeah, she's all ready, she's all grinded up. I'm about to get the welder set up and we're gonna get going. Alright guys, so I got some wet towels here that were placed in the freezer. Didn't leave them long enough for them to be stiff, but they are fairly cold. I'm going to be using them just to protect this hoop again. Like I said, I don't want this LED strip in the back to melt. I'm going to do some tack welds. We'll go from there. Let's do it. Alright guys, we're all done with the welding for now. I think it turned out pretty good. I had to go over it a couple times with the grinding machine, the grinding wheel and the wire wheel, and then I went back and welded in some of the holes that didn't get filled in. Obviously it's not the best welding job. This is new to me. I'm gonna let Shada weld a little bit on the other frame, but I think this one looks pretty good. Look at it from the back. It's good enough for me. It's structurally sound. We got welds all around in there, so I'm happy with it. I'm gonna work out whether I should just cap this off with some plate or maybe angle this and then cover it with plate. I'll figure that out once I deal with the whole electrics tray, but that is not what we're doing today. We're going to continue on with this guy. Remember, this is from a CB650 with the flat top under the seat, so I'm going to have to figure out a way to match these guys all up. This sits a little more narrow than the 650 frame, so I'm gonna have to find a way to match these up on both sides, and then once I get that to be like perfectly straight, I have to figure out how to bring these guys to match. Obviously it's too short. That's not what I'm talking about here. Remember, this angles down on a 650. It kind of ends right here. So I'm gonna have to work out a way to, it's not gonna be perfectly straight. It might have a slight curve to it. Maybe I can do some relief cuts and then slowly bend. I don't know yet. No one has ever done it this way. We'll see if that's for a reason. Maybe it won't work, but yeah, that is what's next. I'm gonna clean up some of these welds or cuts. I'm gonna prep the slugs. So what I was telling you guys earlier, let's just pretend these met up. Let's pretend this was long enough. This slug, I have a slit in here so I can expand it or contract it if I want to. It's gonna sit right in there, right? That way I can tack weld the slug in place. So imagine I drill a hole here, drill a hole here, tack weld, tack weld. That way this doesn't move, and it also gives me something to weld in between the two pieces. You'll see more as we go along, but that's the plan for now. I'm gonna try to figure that out, and we'll go from there. All right guys, so we're on the 81 frame. 79 is finished. Now, remember we're trying to put the 550 seat on this 650. It would be unsafe for me to just try to weld these together without anything in between. So we have these slugs that I'm gonna go in between. It's gonna give me a surface to weld on in between the two pieces. If you could see on this side, I've drilled holes so that I can go in there and just simply tack weld the slug in place, and then that way it'll hold on both sides, and then we can go in later on and do the whole joint.
And this is what he's talking about when he's talking about a slug. Basically a piece of pipe that you're gonna fit it in the frame to have a little bit of support connecting the two pieces.
Yep.
That's only for support anyway, right? So it doesn't
matter. It's just
matter.
to make the weld stronger between the two pieces.
Yeah.
Shady came up with a good idea to use a strap. So we're gonna probably strap this here. One of these. We're gonna strap these two together, compress them just enough so that this can slide over. Weld those in place, and then work on the immediate tubing underneath the seat. Side. Simple as that. The slug is in place.
There's no ways coming out.
No, and that's not really to keep it in place like throughout the whole thing, because obviously we're going to have a huge weld in the middle. That's just for, you know, temporary lining things up. I could make it a little stronger to get a little more penetration, because I don't really see much on the inner side of the tube. So I'll probably crank it up a tiny bit for this side. But that worked pretty well, actually. Now we can try to attach the other piece. Obviously it won't fit, so we need to tighten it a little bit. And that's where the strap
comes in. So you're gonna strap it to make it narrower, correct?
Yes.
To make the frame narrower.
Yeah. Because technically, at the exact spot, they line up, but since these are both angled, and now we've just extended them by 1.5 inches, you're coming inwards.
Yeah.
So you can't just expect this to slide on, right?
Exactly.
So hopefully this strapping gives us the temporary tension we need, and then we'll just take it right off. So that's a test fit, because I'm still going to take this off to drill my my holes on this end, but it seems like it fit fine. Let's take this out. It's like
It's perfect.
almost perfect. This has to come in a little bit, and we'll do the final weld with the strap, or a couple tack welds with the strap. I might give it like 2 relief cuts, like here and here, and maybe try to get it to come up a little bit with a longer inner slug or a longer support rod inside.
Already placed in it.
Yeah. I shouldn't have cut it this short. That was one of the mistakes, and I shouldn't have cut this. Well, this was already cut. I shouldn't have cut this so short. I was like, let me just get us, I don't know why I did that, to be honest, but I still have that material on the other piece, so if I need to, I can replace it. It's not a big deal. I'm just happy this lined up perfectly. It looks pretty good too. If you squint your eyes, it looks like it's done.
Alright guys, so what I'm gonna do right now is grind all this down. Okay, so we finished grinding these pieces that we're gonna weld on to here, but what we also need to cut, not grind, is this bridge right here.
This guy.
Yeah, because we don't need this,
Right.
so we're just gonna cut it off, and that's gonna help us with making an arc as well. We're gonna show you guys that one later, just to smooth out the transition.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff left to cut off here, but we can wait for the end to be cut, like once it's on the frame for like the hoop.
Yeah.
But Shade is about to cut this bracket, or whatever that is, this support brace in the middle, and then also the hinge for the seat. What is up, guys? As we left off last week, we saw Shada getting this rear end for the 81 all prepped and cut. I finished it off by cleaning all the welds that were previously on there, made my marks. So, okay, so we've cleaned this up, and obviously if these go in line, this part is flat, but the original frame kind of came down. So instead of messing with this joint here, I've decided to just cut 2 relief cuts, and then slowly bring this up so that we'll have a very slight curve underneath the seat. In my opinion, that is way better than the straight angle that comes down. Also, this was cut too short, or I cut this too short, which is not an issue. So I'll be using this piece from the other rear end, the original rear end. So we're gonna be cutting these guys down. Well, that's for that side. Let me show you this one. So that will essentially sit like that. This will slide into here. I'll make another slug for this side. And essentially, each side is only going to have 2 slugs. One in the front of this, one behind it. These guys are already one piece. By essentially cutting that relief cut, the width of the grinding wheel is going to be enough for me to hopefully bend that forward, close that gap up, and just, I don't have that much to come up. I don't know, I think that's the best approach with the lack of experience we have with this type of stuff, fabrication wise. I think I did some research, and I think this is solid. I'm not really worried about too much load in these areas. For now, I'm gonna make these half diameter cuts, and then hopefully we'll go from there. If I mess up, I can just grab another one of these off eBay for like 50 bucks. Okay, so before I play around with that curve even more, it's coming along, so I think that's what's gonna work. I want to make sure, or I want to be able to tack this in, you know, without messing with this. So I wanna make sure this angle and this height on both sides are correct, so that I don't curve this too much. So I just want to measure a few things here. All right, guys, we are done with all the pie cuts, mocking up and cutting and grinding. This is pretty much what it's gonna look like. Next step is just to put in some tack welds. As you can see, this is one whole piece here. The pie cuts gave us a little bit of that curve that's just perfect. I measured where the shock mounts to a common spot on both sides, and it's perfect. So I'm gonna clean it up one more time, line everything up with the magnets, and start tack welding. All right, guys, 81 frame is all welded up. So I welded and grinded. Have a little bit more here, but this is basically what it's gonna look like. I put the 79 right behind it so you can see how naturally flat that frame is and how close I got this to be kinda, you know, upright. It has a nice little curve to it. It might be actually cool once the bike is finished, but this essentially used to be like here. Now, I still have a lot of grinding and cleaning up to do. In terms of the hoop for the 81, I'm gonna wait until I have the wheel and suspension on, then just do like a chop and weld, because since the hoop is gonna come up more flat and not kick up, I have there's a risk of me hitting the tire. So I'm gonna have to play around with that once everything's mocked up. Worst case, I do another kick up. You know, that looks cool too. I just wanted one of each, but both of them being kicked up would be no problem at all. For now, I think I'm gonna continue cutting. So I guess the American CB650s have these rear set mounts like welded onto the frame, and I found two sets of the, I want to say they're European. These are aluminum brake and rear set mounts. So if I chop this off both sides, clean up that old weld, and then essentially use this in its place, I think that would be a lot cooler. It doesn't really change where everything mounts to, but it just has more of a sleeker look to it. Plus it's different, and why not? So hopefully these rods that come through can clamp these down as well. Looks like I'm gonna be adding 3/4 of an inch on each side. So we'll see. If I have to, I'll get longer bolts here somehow, but I don't think that's gonna be an issue. But yeah, so for now, I'm gonna cut along these welds. both sides on both frames. That might be it for cutting for now. The next step on the bikes would be mocking up and building the electric trays. I don't have all the electric components to be able to do that yet. I'm thinking for the 81, maybe something simple, stock wiring harness, cleaned up. For the 79, a M gadget, M unit. I don't know, maybe I'll do M unit on both. But that might have to wait. Now that I think about it, that might have to wait until the rear hoop is on the 81. And that needs to wait until the wheels and suspension is on. And that needs to wait on me figuring out how to make an 18-inch wired rear wheel out of the stock 17-inch. Let me show you real quick. Okay, so I have a stock 19-inch for the front wired. I need to get another one of these. I don't know if you guys remember, but both the bikes came with Comstar wheels, and they're so ugly in my opinion. So I want to do wired. I already got one for one of the bikes up front, 19-inch, and then I bought a 17-inch from another 650 for the rear, but I need to figure out how to turn these into 18-inch. So pretty much get an 18-inch barrel slash rim, and then custom sized spokes. That I might have to call Buchanan for, but we'll see. Everything's doubled because there's two bikes, and this was supposed to be budget building, but it's not. That's not where it's going. So for now, I'm gonna do some cutting and see if those things fit. All right, guys. Stock rear mounts and brake pedal mount are off. Let's see if these guys work. So I'll have to drill that hole all the way through because we have a protrusion here. That seems like that's gonna work. On that side, same thing. Beautiful. Just a little added touch I figured I could try. Won't really make a difference because the mounting points on the back end are pretty much the same position, but it is a lot more sleeker where that one is a lot more fatter up top. I'm happy with it. I'm definitely gonna have to get a longer bolt and then a longer swing arm bolt because again, you're adding almost just shy of 2 inches in in width there at the bottom. Maybe not so at the top, but we'll see. Should be good. Now I'm just gonna grind off these welds they had going on here and then clean up everything. I'm done for today. About to clean up. Everything is cut off. Everything is grinded. Like I said, next step would be to either mock up the 81 or just start on the electrics tray on the 79 and then the 81. But yeah, trays and hoop are the major next steps until we send the frames off to powder coating.